Welcome to the Human Evolution Podcast, where we dive deep into the science, philosophies, and strategies that create real and lasting change. I'm Goldstein, and here we leave traditional self-help behind and map the real terrain of true personal development.
For anybody watching this, I know we're just kind of jumping into, I believe this is episode 6. Don't quote me on that. I should know better, but I think this is episode 6. It is May 1st, and a couple exciting announcements or some new things that we're working on is that we're going to do live sessions. Like obviously Ori and I have done that in the past, and we're going to continue to do that where we work through some of my issues that hopefully help other people. Those are going to be put into the Facebook community, and they'll be accessible only for members in there. And what we were just discussing before we started jumping around a little bit is we discussed yesterday, which will be up on the community shortly, a little bit of a, we'll call it what it is, a little bit of a nervous breakdown that I had in Mexico from all of my client accounts and everything, and just being rushed around and being stressed out. So the last few weeks that I was in Mexico, and again, for anybody who wants to get in depth on this, there will be an hour and 45-minute recording in the community, I think.
You're going to share that much?
I think at least an hour and a half, sure. Because I think it's very, very useful. And we were talking before that I know you, and I know a lot of these techniques. And even before I knew you, I was like a student of, like self-help and meditation. And I knew all the tools, yet I still fell into the trap. And I think that's important for people to realize, like, hey, just because like there are people that have been doing this for years and trying to study these things for years, and we still snap, which is exactly what happened. And but yeah, I think I'm going to put most of it up because it's very useful. Hopefully, be helpful to people. And my last few weeks in Mexico, it felt like there was somebody with their hand in my chest, just squeezing my heart the entire time, like that tightness. And it was 12 hours a day. Now, was I over caffeinating to stay awake and stay productive? Absolutely, that didn't help either. So that just compounded, caffeine, double espresso on top of all the stress and everything else. So anyway, but since we had our session yesterday, everything's been much, much better. Obviously, it's always a work in progress. So there's much more work to do. But even those few tools that you gave me at the end of the session yesterday, which again will be available on Facebook in the community, made significant impact, through last night and this morning. So we'll see. Maybe after we record here, maybe I'll go screaming through the neighborhood. I don't know, but I do feel pretty good right now, though. So I appreciate that. That was very good advice, and hopefully it's helpful to everybody.
And the one thing I want to say that was just so interesting to me was just like, and I see this with so many of my clients, is while you were going through the hell, it's like you've always got me on speed dial. You've always got me on WhatsApp that you can send me a message. Yet while you're going through hell, the last thing you thought of doing was sending me a message or reaching out to me. And I find that happens with so many people because in the moment of things going crazy is when your nervous system kicks up and basically says, I got to fix this. I got to make things happen. And the last thing you think about doing is actually reaching out for help. And it's literally the concept of tunnel vision in terms of the fact of I have to do everything myself. And I want you right now, and I want everyone listening right now to really pay attention to that in terms of how powerful it can be that when you do reach out for help and you feel better, how much more resourceful you feel on the other side.
100%. And my feeling at the time, even knowing I could call you anytime, even if it was nights or weekends, because obviously I know you're always there for me. It was so strange because I knew I should do these things. And in the moment, I was like, I just want to hide. I just want to get under the bed, get under the covers, whatever it was, just literally hide, like physically hide, like not just not go out of the apartment, but like hide like a little kid in the apartment. And I think there's some element of, and this goes back to one of our topics that hopefully come up a lot, is just that idea of shame. Like, oh, I should know better. Like I know he's there for me, but I should be able to handle this. Then I can tell him like, hey, guess what? I worked through it. Instead of reaching out to you in the moment, I'm like, I'll just let him know when it's over,
And this actually leads back to the conversation that we had before about the concept of toxic positivity to some degree, right? Like it's like when I reach out to a client, the last thing I want to know is them lying to me, them putting on a mask and be like, yeah, everything is good. In the moment, like the one thing I need is for you to be raw and real with me. And every single person has this thought stuck in their head of it goes in one of two directions. Either they see themselves as completely broken and they just see themselves as never being able to be fixed, or they see themselves as having to be so strong that they never want to show their weak side, their weak underbelly to the world. And the one thing that I want to create, especially with you, I mean, given the fact that we have this relationship, is I want you to feel safe enough to show me your weak underbelly, and understanding the fact that instead of being ashamed in that moment, the true strength that you have is in showing your weakness to someone that can help you through it. And in the same way, like, I know for a fact that there's going to be times that, I mean, that there's going to be things I reach out to you and you're going to be my support system.
Yeah.
It's, you need to know that you're surrounded by love and support. Otherwise, this world feels very, very sad, very, very scary, and very, very lonely.
And I think also for men, just in general, now in recent years, we've kind of recognized that a lot of like younger men, or even people our age, I guess, but well, obviously people at our age that, you know, kind of came up in the 80s and 90s weren't necessarily told don't show emotion, but it still wasn't really, we didn't really see a lot of that in our parents. And again, no fault of theirs. It's just because they, like you were saying, they mirrored or mimicked their parents and so on and so forth going backwards. But it's also, I imagine that even with some of your clients, and maybe I don't know, this is a good question, like the male to female, do you find that men have a harder time opening up, or is it kind of a split?
It is 100% a split. It's like, I actually just this morning, I had someone reach out and we were talking about exactly this, over the concept of big girls don't cry, and, or big boys don't cry. You know, it's just that thing. And like the way I believe that it basically happened is, like, I mean, going back 20 generations, a parent came up with this really smart idea of telling my kid, don't cry because that's what a big boy does, or this is what a big girl does. And in order for the parent to just get their moment of relaxation from the kid screaming. And it just became something that you start learning in terms of, like, this is the way I should be in this world. And the thing, for example, in the Emotional Alchemy Journal, or the thing I love to do with my clients as a whole, is understanding the fact that the entire spectrum of your emotions is something that you should be completely safe with accepting. That when you are sad, you should be crying. When you're angry, you should be screaming. I'm not saying that you necessarily need to be screaming at the person, or that you need to be screaming out loud, but you need to let that rage out of you somewhere. Otherwise, it starts bottling up and it starts creating, as they say in the self-help woo-woo thing, dis-ease. Literally, you do feel uncomfortable. And my belief is, with enough time, and you'll see this with a Vipassana retreat that you're going to be doing, is you'll start realizing how much of your issues get somaticized. And we've said this, I don't know how many times over the course of our recordings together, but the body will keep the score. And when you just get to that place of just releasing stuff, the score's 0-0. And that's where you want to get it to, right? So it's like, it male, female, the entire gamut. It's just society today just believes that emotions are somehow wrong.
And I, as you're talking, I've kind of realized, obviously neither one of us have experience being a female, but thought crossed my mind that maybe as the males, you know, over time, were taught to not show emotion. It's probably happening to the young women now too. Like, hey, you need to be tough. You need to, you know, because they're more like,
even more so now, right?
The pendulum swing, as they say, always goes too far in the other direction. So that's really interesting.
And then it goes on the other side for the males, in terms of the fact that now you're getting the feminization of males becomes a problem in society too, where all of a sudden guys are just not capable of sharing their emotions, of storing their emotions, and actually being able to regulate themselves. I think that the healthy thing is being able to regulate yourself and choosing how to respond in any situation. Getting rid of the reaction moment in terms of, like, oh my God, I think I'm just going to go stab that person, which isn't necessarily a healthy thing, and saying, I have anger and I need to get this out of me. And a healthy response is to deal with my anger, whether it's journaling it, whether it's screaming into a pillow, whether it's talking to someone about it, hint, hint, neatly, and actually finding out what it is that you need to be doing.
Yeah, no, 100%. And like I said, we won't get into details because that's, you know, content for the community, but I will say that I've watched people around me burn out over the years through all of my stupid jobs. And I've also watched a lot of people that I considered, I don't want to say lazy, but lazy, it could have worked a little harder, that took the work-life balance or 3-hour work week thing to the extreme. So I've seen the whole spectrum there. And I knew what a nervous breakdown was, of course, or whatever the terminology we want to put on it. I just was like, wow, I'm just working really hard, and I'm going to work for 3 more weeks, and everything will be fine. And it was like that. Like I was telling you, it was like that. I was in a bad place, of course. I was really stressed out, and I was task switching, and I was tense the whole time. And then all of a sudden, one day, my body was like, nope, you just need to go sleep. And I did. It was very strange. I honestly wouldn't believe it until it actually happened to me. It's very, very very strange.
So, I mean, just to wrap this part up, it's like I'm just really, really happy you're doing better. And I mean, it's there's definitely more to do. It's not to say that this is a done deal, but you definitely had the straw that broke the camel's back. And I'm glad to see that you're on the other side of it and feeling a lot more resourceful.
Well, this leads us into any number of topics.
So I think that all these kind of fit into a specific thing. And it's one of the topics I discuss a lot in terms of it's one of my core philosophies. And it's what I call you're trying too hard. And whenever I say that, people don't really know what that means. I know I've said this to you multiple times and it's possibly shown up in the podcast, but what the hell does it mean trying too hard as a whole? And so as a matter of fact, like I'd like to actually share a video to get this started. Like we'll go from there. It's a very simple video that I just love doing. So let me just share my screen super quick.
This week we ran a little experiment where we blindfolded someone and we put them in a room and we said, hey, you have to get from this side of the room to that side of the room. And we put a bunch of obstacles in front of them. And then we brought 3 people in. And we said, hey, you need to help this person get from this side of the room to that side of the room. This is what happened. Watch this.
Take your left foot and like bring it up, like do like you're doing like a high knee. If that works, I can roll with it. You got it. Right foot up and move it to your right. Like a separate. Okay.
Nate, can I touch him?
You know everything you need to know.
Gotcha. Right foot forward, step right there. Perfect. And then bring the left foot like gracefully leftward around. There you go. You okay? Next one. And okay, right up. And then go straight down.
You ready?
Yes. Can I touch him?
You know everything you need to know.
So the thing I love about that video is the fact that like and the reason why that ties into me with the concept of you're trying too hard is we have these rules set upon ourselves, going back to our previous conversation of big boys don't cry. Now, I can tell you things like, for example, Lee, you should be expressing your emotions, but you're so busy tied in the old stories you have in your head of big boys don't cry, or I have to I have to worry in order to succeed, that this is what happens for you. And you don't even realize that you continue doing it even when you've got the advice telling you not to. It's back to the Good Will Hunting moment when Robin Williams says to Matt Damon the first time, it's not your fault. And Matt Damon is like, yeah, I know. And in the same way, you're telling the person, go across the room, you go move the person across the room. And they're so busy stuck in the rules that they have set for themselves that they can't think outside the box for a second and say, well, if I just take off the blindfold, this becomes super freaking easy.
Yeah.
And that idea that you have, like so going back to our session, which is where I really want to take this to some degree because I want you to get something out of this, is you already know for a fact that you could reach out to me. But that little kid inside of you is sitting there saying, well, I don't want to be an inconvenience, or I have to be strong, or I want to make Ori proud of me. And you know for a fact, for example, that the people that quote unquote felt let down from you, that you didn't need to make them whole, but there was that part inside of you that sat there saying like, absolutely, I do. Or you knew for a fact that they would be okay, even if you didn't make them whole, but you sat there going, oh my God, it's my fault. There's so many different things going on. And you're so busy with that freaking blindfold on that even when you tell yourself these stories, you're too stuck to actually see beyond them.
No, it's 100% what happened.
And that is my definition of trying too hard. You keep telling yourself, I'm going to do better, I'm going to do better, I'm going to do better. But you have no clue about the fact that you've basically handicapped yourself by keeping your freaking blindfold on the whole time.
And it also works when things are going well, or at least this is a problem for me. Like, oh shit, things are going too well. There's going to be, the other shoe's going to drop. Then, I worry the entire time as I'm doing something. And then I worry when things go well, because it's just that constant,
And so that goes to the concept, and we've discussed this before, is a concept of you have no clue how to make yourself happy. So you sit there saying, when things are going well, I'm worried that the other shoe is going to drop. So basically what's happening is even when things are going well, you're not feeling good. So when things aren't going well, you don't feel good. When things are going well, you still don't feel good. So you're in this, what we call emotional home, and your emotional home is a state of worry and anxiety, regardless what's going on in your life. And so you say, once I succeed, that worry will go away. And then what happens is you finally succeed and you go, oh, just wait for that shoe to drop. And you're sitting there saying, well, if I do more, then I'll become more successful. And you try so hard to make yourself successful so the worry will go away. Where the thing is, you just have to remove the frickin' blindfold and get into that place of sitting there saying, my emotional home is worry. And what I need to do is teach myself how to feel calm even when things aren't going well. Make that my habit. And when that becomes your habit, things go well, things don't go well, you're still winning the game.
I really like this this idea of emotional home. I know we talked about it a little bit before, but because really it's everybody's baseline. Again, no matter what I'm doing, there's an undertone of worry. Could be having the best day ever, could be having the worst day ever, but it's like that baseline that I'm assuming. I mean, obviously we all have, but I know plenty of people that I'm like, aren't you going to worry about something? Shit, we have so much, and they're like, why? I'm like, what do you mean why? I know people that are even more wound up than I am. So,
and society basically makes it so like the people that don't worry, they look like the weird ones. They look like the ones that we should basically be taking as an example of like, oh my God, that person is going to get hit by a truck and not even realize it happened. That stupid idiot. And don't get me wrong, there is something to be said about a person being mindless and careless in a terrible way. But again, avoiding the extremes. If you just pay attention to the concept of your emotional home being a place of, you know what, I am resourceful and everything is going to be okay eventually. The thing I said to you yesterday that it's been something that really stuck in my mind so well was that concept of I'm too smart to fail for too long. I love that concept because what that does is it doesn't mean that you're not going to fail. It doesn't mean that things aren't going to be tough for you. It's to say that you're resourceful enough that even when you fail, you'll pivot and you'll do better. And that brings within you a sense of comfort and faith that everything is going to be okay. And the more you can be in that state of comfort and faith and start making that your emotional home, what happens is you build a habit just as much as the habit of drinking 8 glasses of water a day, whatever it is. By doing it enough times, you get there. You build a habit of emotionally feeling safe and comfortable. And then all of a sudden you get to the point of things aren't going well and you go, everything is going to be okay. And things do go well and you go, I think things might even get better.
I like that a lot. I like that. I need that screensaver. I need to put that on my screensaver. Well, and like any other habit, it takes time too. And a lot of people, with our culture these days is such a hard thing to stick with anything, really, just because we're just, videos are getting shorter. Content is coming at us so fast. The news cycle, everything, just life. Everything we do is just so much faster paced. Habit forming seems to be harder than it used to be.
To stop you there for 1 second there, what I will say is, it takes 5 times as long, and this is back to you're trying so hard. It takes 5 times as long if you're trying to do it with a blindfold on. If you're sitting there saying like, I'm constantly worried and I got to get myself to stop worrying. I'm constantly worried and I got to get myself to stop worrying. You're trying too hard. You're losing the game because you're sitting there with a blindfold on going like, how in the world do I get across this room? Well, do you know what? I stepped 3 steps and then when I stepped the 4th step, my foot went in the wrong direction and I knocked over the glass. Let's start over. And on the 4th step, I'll do it differently. And the thing that can make a difference, and the thing that we played around with yesterday, is taking off the blindfold, in which case it doesn't have to take very long because you stop trying so hard. You just change the reality in which that you're functioning in the first place.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
So for you, for example, as a kid, you learned to worry. And again, it's just a generational thing. You saw your mom do it. You saw your dad do it. You just saw people around you do it. And so that became your blindfold. That became your way of looking at the world. What I aimed to do with you yesterday is to teach you to comfort that kid and show him that what he learned was wrong, that what he learned was borderline abusive. Not that your parents were abusive people or that they were bad people, but teaching a child, like if I were to be a parent and I were to walk up to a child and I were to say, you better always be afraid of me, you'd be like, oh my God, that parent is abusing a child. However, when a parent just teaches the child to always be afraid, you say that's not abusive. That's just the child learning from the parent. But what a child is meant to learn is the fact that they live in a safe environment and everything will end up being okay. And when it isn't, they've got enough support around them that everything will work out. When a child has that kind of childhood, they become a healthy, functional adult. And so as soon as you can make that connection in your brain of the fact that my childhood showed me unhealthy things, and it doesn't mean that I need to continue that as an adult, you take off the blindfold, and yes, you still have to develop a habit, but it makes so much more sense and it becomes 10 times easier.
Yeah, I think you should touch on, just for whoever's listening to this particular show, the inner child and then the adult, just like a quick, because I loved that yesterday, and that's what actually helped me get back to sleep last night when I woke up and I was a little stressed out. So just like a real quick synopsis of of that whole theory?
Well, instead of going real quick, because it's something that I just feel is so important, and in the first podcast we went over it, but like it's just something that I just don't feel people really understand the power of it. And it's going back to that thought experiment. And I do want to take it at the long level kind of thing, just to show people what I mean by that. So again, the thought experiment is plain and simply, I hand you a pill, I give you the pill, and from this day forth, you are never going to age. You're going to stay the age you are right now forever. And so I give you the pill. 6 months pass, not much has changed in your life. It's just been 6 months, so be it. A year passes and you haven't aged and things around you have changed to some degree and everything is okay and you're still the same Lee. 5 years pass and you realize that 5 years of you being stressed over creating content for people and still living in the same thing, and you're starting to look at your life a bit differently, and you're sitting there thinking, you know what, looking at the past 5 years, not much has changed for me, but 5 years have passed anyway, not a big deal. But now what happens after 25 years pass? And you're still 43 years old. And it's been 25 years of being 43 years old and still being afraid of messing up like your parents did. But now your parents are in their 80s. Or fast forwarding 15 years after that, and now your parents have passed away. And you've had this issue inside of yourself of how you would make your parents feel how you would make your parents feel if you failed at something. And now your parents are dead. And at some point in time, you sit there going like, I guess it doesn't matter what my parents think about me, they're gone. And, or let's just say that it's some kind of fear of losing people. And your girlfriend has now hit the age of 100 and died. And you're still a 43-year-old guy. And you go into a depression for 10 years going like, oh my God, she was the love of my life. I miss her so much. But at the end of the day, let's say that depression lasts 10 years. Let's say that depression lasts 20 years. At some point in time, you're just going to get to the point of sitting there saying, I guess my life will go on without her. I guess my life will go on without my parents. And let's fast forward 150 years into your future, and you've dealt with your childhood trauma. You've dealt with the fact that you were afraid of not being good enough. You dealt with people leaving your life. You became rich and you lost it. And you lost it so badly that you just said, screw it, my life isn't worth anything. And you lived under a bridge for 10 years. And after 10 years of living under a bridge, you realized, oh shit, Ori gave me a pill and I'm always going to be this age. I better do something. Otherwise, I'm just going to live under the bridge for the rest of my life. So you went and you made your life better. And now fast forward 300 years into your future. You've dealt with all this shit. You became the billionaire and you realized your life wasn't going to be any better. You became the pauper and you realized that it didn't kill you. You lost people. You dealt with all your childhood shit. You were in depression you were in bouts of depression for 10 years here, 20 years there, dealing with your shit. After 300 years, you've dealt with so much shit that everything is gone and you're just you and you're just centered. You finally hit that place of enlightenment. Now, the thing that really happens when you hit that place of enlightenment, if you really think about what happens to you after those 300 years, think about what your average day is going to be like after dealing with all this shit. You wake up in the morning and yeah, you need to work, so you do something, but at the end of the day, you've had 300 years to think about it. What you're going to do is the things that come naturally easily for you and the things that you just want to do. And if something doesn't work out for you, you just kind of like, you know what, screw it. Like maybe it'll be another 5 years until I fix it, but this too shall pass. And you just stop caring about the small things in your life that aren't working. And at the end of the day, all that you're really looking to do is to just today have a good day. And if it isn't a good day, you realize this will pass and tomorrow will be okay. So when you really play that 300 years into the future game, what it really boils down to, what you see your life looking like, is the number one core emotion you have is just accepting what is. You know, like whatever the hell is going on, I accept it. And that's what I call loving. What true love to me is just accepting the other person or accepting the situation for what it is. I don't need it to change in order for me to accept it. It's unconditional acceptance. So after 300 years, this isn't going well. Whatever, so be it. I'm not enjoying this part of my job. Well, you know what? I'll change it. I won't change it. It just is what it is. And so the first thing that you have is just the sense of unconditional love and acceptance of what is. Not because you're airy-fairy, but just because you've dealt with enough shit that everything is going to pass. Which leads into the second emotion, which is the emotion of just peace and faith. You've got complete peace with your past because you dealt with it all. And you just have faith that maybe it won't be okay tomorrow, maybe it won't be okay in 5 years from now, but over the course of the rest of eternity, things are going to work themselves out. Nothing is that big a deal. And the thing that really drives you on a day-to-day basis is just a state of joy. Like, what is it that's going to make me smile today? Because there's no reason in the world, there's no one I need to appease, there's nothing I need to do to make them happy. Because they're going to die, they're going to pass on. I'm going to be here forever, so I might as well make me happy, and they can join along for the ride. So it's going to be love, peace, and faith is really what you end up seeing ends up existing for you after these 300 years. And so to me, I believe that these are the core states that human beings were made to experience. These are the core states of what nirvana would be like as such. And so the way I like to describe it is I like to think of it as every single person inside of us really consists of two separate people. You've got this, let's call it evolved adult self, and I just call it the adult. And the adult has these core emotions. The only thing the adult feels is love, peace, and faith. I accept what is, I've got peace with the past, I've got faith for what's going to happen, and I'm focused in on having joy. And then everything else is literally just your conditioning from your past. It's the way your parents taught you to be, it's the fears that you were taught to have, or it's the fears that you developed over time, whatever it is. And that's what we're just going to call the child. And the easiest thing is, and the thing I played around with you yesterday, is just plain and simply, if it's not love, peace, or faith, it's a child emotion. It's just that simple. It's hypnosis that has been put inside of you and that you're trying to make the world work given these rules, as opposed to stepping out and saying, well, the adult inside of me is love, peace, and faith, and I don't need to play by these rules. I can take off the blindfold and I can see things better. So I know you asked me for the short description, but I really wanted to go into it because to me, love, peace, joy are the things that drive everything.
Yeah, and I'm glad we went a little bit deeper because, like I said, from the time we spoke about this yesterday until today, I've applied that mindset. And my afternoon was, well, first of all, I was exhausted when we got off our call and I had to go lay down for a while. But
very
probably
common.
Because, well, lack of exercise and lots of carbs, but that's a whole different story. I guess I would be at peace for the rest of the day. I had things that were going on. I had tasks that were piling up, and there are deadlines on some of the things I have to do. But it didn't have the same hold on me that it normally would have. And usually that is a significant problem. That's the first time that you and I had done that and that we talked about the techniques. And it was an instant, I mean, long ways to go for sure, but it really did. And hopefully for anybody listening that is picking up on the concept of it, it's something you can apply this afternoon. And it really does make a huge difference. And this is coming from somebody who's a complete ball of nerves all the time, whether I want it to be or not. Like, it's always that force that I'm fighting against. So it was very, very helpful.
And so first off, I'm really, really happy it was helpful. And the thing I want to point out to you is we spoke about this in our very, very, very first session and podcast together. The thing that made a difference yesterday was the fact that we actually, number one, applied it based upon something that was going on in your life as opposed to just theory, which is, again, a reason why I want you to reach out to me while things are going on so we can deal with something that's going on for you. And secondly, what we did was we also locked it in with specific techniques to basically make the difference. And the one technique that was just very simple was literally creating that metaphor in your mind of the child and adult. And basically, the rule is plain and simply, if it's not love, peace, or joy, it's your child acting. And so what I believe that gave you yesterday, for example, was the ability of, am I feeling love, peace, or joy right now? No. Okay, fine. This is the kid. And I get to love that kid. I get to basically say, I understand that this is what happened, that mom showed you certain things or that life showed you certain things, whatever it is. But we're not going to continue this. Let's go back to love, peace, joy.
Yeah, it's putting a label on those two sides is really all that I needed, because otherwise it's me thinking that my whole being is whatever. Now, of course, there's only one consciousness in here, but putting a label on it, like that's the child, that's the adult. I'm like, so as soon as I started getting worked up about something small, even I forget, something happened in the afternoon that was minuscule, but I'm like, oh, okay, just that alone, labeling it I was able to set it aside and like, not a big deal. So it's strange that it's all it took, but it really did make a profound difference.
I love that, brother. That like really, really, really makes me happy. And now the next thing that I actually want to play with you about right now, for other people listening too, is I don't know if you realize, like, I mean, how many times you put yourself down as you were talking about, well, I'm a mess in here. And for me, I know that there's so much more work I need to do. And what I want you to realize for a fact is that this is just, again, the kid playing, the child playing, and the child basically having to one down themselves. And we've also discussed this in a previous podcast, but this is something that you also need to start teaching yourself to do. And we can do a separate session on that another time. But like, I want you to pay attention to this just as much as we spoke about it before. But now I want you to understand that your emotional home, or your habit that you have inside of your mind, is instead of seeing yourself as capable, and you do see yourself as capable, but what you do is you talk yourself down. And that part of talking yourself down and sitting in there saying, I've got so many problems and I'm going to be messed up forever, is you're kneecapping yourself every step of the way. You're keeping the blindfold on, as opposed to sit there saying, like, I'm really capable. And this is exactly what I spoke to you about in the last podcast that we spoke about this. I'm extremely capable. Look at this job I did and I did it well. Look at this career I had and I did it well. Look at all these things I'm doing that are so amazing. But what you'll do is, as you say that, you're going to have that voice in your head going, yeah, but. And what I want you to realize is that is still the freaking child trying to always talk himself down so he never stands on too high a pedestal and has it knocked down from him.
A lot of times when you're talking, I'm like, oh, I remember something now. So most of my childhood, I'm just, when I say this, I mean, I'm the average height, average weight, just a great community. I grew up in a very small town in northern Minnesota. You know, it was a mining town. So a lot of, I'm not saying that I'm sure there was a ton of issues there, of course, but you know, like just single family homes, a lot of families. It was something you don't really see much of these days, or at least I'm not in those areas anymore. But I did get, I don't want to say bullied, but I was always like, because my father was in law enforcement and he was one of the only cops in town. So I wasn't always accepted into a lot of groups. So there was a little bit of probably from, I forget what age up until high school, where I got picked on a little bit more than others. And at a certain point in high school, I realized I could make people laugh. Some of that, being able to make people laugh or be able to entertain people and be accepted, was a little bit of self-deprecating humor, a little bit of that mixed with other things. And that's when, like, I started becoming very social and got very accepted. So somewhere in those teenage years, that's when I started doing the whole like self-deprecating thing, which was a big hit, by the way, and it still is now at the bar. But yeah, that started.
Well, here's the interesting thing is, and I think I may have shared this with you before, but this was like one of the changing experiences, one of the turning experiences of my life. So for me, my story, and we've all got one, so just know your story is yours. My story was, we moved around a lot when I was a kid. And so moving around a lot, what I had to do was to learn very quickly how to make friends when you get to a new school or whatever it is, so you don't become the kid that gets bullied. So I became really, really good at just connecting with people. And I learned the same as you, that self-deprecation is a very easy way to do it, because you come in as a dog with a tail tucked beneath his butt. And so the alpha males definitely tend to like you that little bit more, and you end up basically joining in on the group, right? So self-deprecation has its benefits. And so but what I discovered was, throughout high school, however much people liked me or didn't like me, I had very low self-esteem. Regardless what I did, I always had low self-esteem. And this is something that I would say is something that I see inside of you too. And I wouldn't say that it's a huge thing, but to some degree, there's that part inside of you that just is always not necessarily feeling very good about himself.
You nail it.
And so so for me, my self-deprecation was, my name is Ori, and it's in school. I used to get teased like crazy for it, because it was just an easy way for kids to tease another kid. So I came up with this cute little joke, and my joke was, hey, my name's Ori, but if you don't remember it, just say, hey, stupid, and I'll turn around. So like, it was like an easy way to basically like, just, if you forget it, and it was also like a self-deprecating way, and it got a little chuckle. Fast forward to the age of 2021, I go to my first NLP class, to my first NLP course, and it's residential, so you're there for 30 days. And I'm introducing myself to all the people, and I'm really good at this, right? So like, I've got my little spiel down, right? I know how to get people to laugh, whatever it is. So I start introducing myself. I introduce myself to a few of the teachers, and I walk up to a few of the students. And as I do, I start shaking hands. I'm like, hey, my name's Ori, but if you ever forget it, just say, hey, stupid, I'll turn around. And the woman, or whoever it was, just gives me a little giggle. And the one teacher like calls me over. He's like, hey, come over here. Come over here now. And I'm like, okay. And like, I walk up to him, and I'm like, yeah, what's going on? He's like, what did you just say? And I'm like, oh, I just met Sandy, whatever her name is, like I just met her. And he's like, no, what did you just say? And I'm like, I told her my name. That's how you meet people. I don't understand what your question is here, And it's like, no, what were your words? What did you just say? I'm like, oh, my joke. It's like, I said, hey, my name's Ori, but if you don't remember, just say, hey, stupid, I'll turn around. And this guy, he's like, you're at a hypnosis course. Do you understand? Every single time you say that, your unconscious mind is eavesdropping on you. And I love that statement. Your unconscious mind is eavesdropping on you. Every single time you say that, your unconscious mind hears it and takes it as a prediction, going back to our first podcast of Nicole's going to grow up and be fat. So every single time you say it, your unconscious mind hears, I'm stupid. I'm stupid. I'm stupid. I'm stupid. And what he did with me was, it was a very simple thing. And like, he just made a small shift with me. It's like, we just changed my introduction to like, hey, my name's Ori, but if you ever forget it, just say, hey, gorgeous. I'll turn around. It always gets the same laugh. It always gets the same kind of result, but it actually gets more of a laugh. But the thing that really makes a difference with it is, now what I'm doing is I'm feeding my unconscious mind the power. I'm feeding my unconscious mind powerful statements. And what I'm hearing with you is that self-deprecation. And I understand that it happened to you in school, but I really want you to lock this thought in place of, your unconscious mind is always freaking eavesdropping. If you sit there saying, I'm a mess, you say it once, it's like, okay, it's not necessarily the worst thing unless you're in a high emotional state, in which case it tends to have a higher impact. But if you say that over and over again, and you're in a specific state, your unconscious mind is just going to learn that. It's the power of affirmations, just done in the worst way possible.
And how long do you think from childhood, like obviously we were saying, the hypnosis of our parents and everything else. So do you think it's just a lifelong thing that we have that, power over like a subconscious or our unconscious mind? Because I'm wondering, like, is are younger children more impressionable, more susceptible, or am I just as susceptible to these stupid thoughts now, even at my age?
So I like to believe that children are more susceptible, which is why a child can hear. And let's change it this way. Children have heroes. And hypnosis to me is when you're in a place that you trust a person without really questioning what's going on. We've gone into this to some degree, that hypnosis is when you bypass the critical faculty of the brain, the part of the brain that questions does this make sense or not. Children, their critical faculty isn't established. And secondly, whatever their parents tell them, they tend to believe to be absolutely true. Or whatever their teachers tell them, or their grandparents tell them, or adults tell them, whatever it is. So every single time that a person tells you something and that part in your brain doesn't criticize it and push it away, hypnosis has occurred. And so for children, yes, that critical faculty isn't as established. And there's certain heroes that they have that when the hero says something, they just tend to believe it completely. But in the same way, all hypnosis is your brain not criticizing a thought. So with that being said, if you say one time, my life is a mess, but you've got that little part in your brain saying, yeah, but it really isn't, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it still somehow becomes a little soundbite that you keep repeating in your brain. And at some point in time, if it becomes a soundbite, you're going to say it, and your brain isn't going to be there to say, yeah, but. And it's going to sink in just as much as if your parents did it to you when you were young. So I like to believe that adults are a little bit more on guard, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're in any way immune.
And it's interesting thinking about the last few years, once I've become a little bit more aware. I didn't really grow up until I was 28, even though I was in the military when I was 18, and then I had an important job when I was 22. I wasn't really mature-ish until 28, and then I didn't really figure out who I was until about 37. Like when I got comfortable in my own skin. And I remember the days exactly. I was like, oh shit, I didn't think this was going to happen or be a thing. But the point I'm getting at is that I'm wonder the last few years I've been a little bit more aware of my own, anxiety and, mental health and everything else, more in tune with myself. Because I do keep saying that story to myself and to others. Like, I'm a very anxious person. So even though I'm aware of it and I'm working on it, I do tend to keep reinforcing it over and over again. You know what I mean? So maybe that's probably not doing myself any favors. It's probably slowing down my progress.
No, it's not probably. It is definitely not doing you any favors. What is the favor you're doing for yourself by saying I'm an anxious person? Give me one example aside from the fact that possibly you're just telling people what you consider to be a truth. Let's take off the blindfold for a second. Like, let's have your Goodwill Hunting moment. Why in the world would you tell people you're an anxious person? What benefit does this provide you aside from you perhaps telling them a truth, quote
I
unquote?
don't know if it's maybe some form of defense mechanism. So when people see me getting a little worked up about something that they're not, I'm just kind of preempting. Oh, just so you know, like obviously it doesn't roll out in conversation like that, but I just over time, at some point or another, it comes up because I'll be a little impatient with people. And then maybe I realize that I'm irritating them or something, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I'm just an anxious guy," you know, like that kind of like a roundabout way like that.
So,
Maybe in service of them, you know.
So this is something that, again, we put into the group. There's talking about the concept of universals, right? So like to say I'm an anxious person is very different from saying I used to have bouts of anxiety. In which case, if you get anxious, you can tell the person, oh gosh, I guess my anxiety sprung up a little bit. I'll get back down to centeredness as quickly as possible. But when you say I am an anxious person, that's an identity level statement. That's basically saying I am a man, I am an anxious person. When you just qualify that away into like, I used to have bouts of anxiety, what you're doing now is you're opening up an entire world of possibilities of what could happen for you into your future.
Yeah. I'm thinking about all the times recently where I've brought it up. Look, it could also be, I could also use it as a crutch. I'm sure that somebody's criticized in recent history. This has surely happened where somebody's like, hey, you probably shouldn't drink so much. That I'm like, well, you know, I'm anxious, you know, so I'm sure I've used it as in a childish way as well,
okay.
You know, trying to defend my poor choices. So, but I can tell you that it does surface in my mind a lot, and it does come out of my mouth a lot. So now that we're talking about it, I realize that. So
yep. And so that actually is what we call secondary gain. It's basically, and I think that we actually spoke about this before, about the idea of like a person that has a backache, but they don't really want to get rid of it because it stops them from getting a chance, stops them from having to mow the lawn kind of thing, you know? And so it's being an anxious person. If that gives you the excuse
happy
to
hour,
drink,
God damn it.
Then it's happy hour and I get a chance to just drift away from my anxiety by having a drink. So I can understand that there's a part inside of you that sits there thinking, well, anxiety is a very useful thing for me to hold on to because now it gives me an excuse to drink. And this goes back to what we spoke about before, where drink if you want to drink. Don't use an excuse anymore. And now you can deal with your anxiety.
Yeah.
Be a freaking adult, make a decision and say, I'm going to go out and drink. Not because I'm an anxious person. I'm going to go out and drink because I haven't completely dealt with my drinking issue yet, or I feel like it, or whatever it is. Be a freaking adult and decide to drink because you want to drink. Stop having to excuse yourself and use this as a crutch, because what you're doing now is you're double whammying yourself. You're now becoming a drinker and an anxious person. Where's the benefit in that?
Humans are pretty good at making excuses for things. At least I am. I've always been, until I got a little bit more mature and started accepting being accountable. And I'm not saying I'm not there yet either. I'm not fully accountable, but I'm working on it.
You just gave me the exact logic there. Until I became more mature and became more accountable. And that is back to adult and child. The adult doesn't need an excuse. The child is afraid of people talking about them a certain way or what they'll look like or something else. The adult accepts what is. I want a drink. Has peace with it. I like drinking. Has faith. It's not going to make me into a crazy alcoholic. The child sits there saying, I need to have an excuse to drink. Otherwise, oh my God, what will they say about me? It's back to the exact same thing. So yes, I want you to mature enough, and that is literally human evolution. I want you to evolve past being a child into becoming an adult and making adult decisions. Even if they're bad decisions, at least you made them as an adult. That's where power sits.
Hopefully it helps people. I put a lot out there, and there's an element of, but I feel good about it because I know that there's millions of people like me that go through the same thing, that quote unquote should know better and to just continue to struggle with it. But as we come to a close here, it's May 1st. We have a 5-day challenge coming up. Ori, do you want to give us a little bit of information on that?
Yeah, so it's when people join our Facebook community, they get the Emotional Alchemy Journal, and I definitely want people to get the most out of it. So what we decided to do is a quick 5-day boot camp where you come on live every single day, Monday through Friday, just for like an hour or so, and I take you through the journal, teach you how to use it properly, and show you how it can absolutely change your life. It's a perhaps one of the most powerful tools I've ever created, and it's really a game changer. And I'm excited to just share it with people just to see how much we can help people change their lives.
We'll link all that in the show notes and make sure the information's in there. And to be continued, my friend.
Always a pleasure, Lee. Love it, man. Thank you.
Hey everyone, it's Lee. Just one more thing before you go. If you've ever wondered if journaling could change your life, you can find out for free by downloading the Emotional Alchemy Journal from the link in the description. Also, if you're looking to connect with people who are just as passionate about growth as you are, check out our Facebook community. It's a great place to discuss what you've heard on the podcast and get access to exclusive content and sessions that are only available there. Just search for Human Evolution Movement on Facebook, or you can find the link in the description. Until next time, keep challenging the chaos within, be a little kinder to yourself, and let's continue to evolve together.